and running to the left during the general, we should not be afraid of the media or the left-wing Twitter mob. We don't need to play the game. We need to do right by Canadians, and that includes knowing where we stand.
Who the fuck is this? Where's Pierre? Why don't they say Pierre's name? Oh, here it is. Scott Atchison, Roman Baber, Jean Charest, Leslyn Lewis, Pierre Poilievre, hell yeah. Patrick Brown declined to participate. Candice Malcolm from the digital media platform True North, and Jamil Giovanni from Canada Strong and Free Network moderate the debate. First two official debates organized by the party will be held on May 11th. The party will announce its new leader on September 10th. I might have to buy a MP membership so I can vote for Poirier.
We can unite at time of election and win the next election.
Thank you, Mr. Weber. Finally to you, Mr. Poilievre.
Yes.
Well, I'm undefeated in 7 consecutive elections in a big Ontario multicultural city. That's because I don't try to go through the liberal media to get my message out. I go around them. I deliver my message to millions of people through social media that we're seeing in the tens of thousands who've been coming out to my rallies, people who have never voted Conservative before in their lives. Secondly, I win because I campaign on our strengths. And our biggest strength right now is that we are the low-tax, low-inflation party that will make your dollar go far enough to buy a home, afford groceries, and fuel up your car. That's why it's important that we have a leader with an impeccable track record on taxes and the cost of living. We can't elect someone who has a record of raising taxes. I've been cutting taxes, fighting inflation, and empowering the working class my entire life, and we'll win an election with that message. Thank you.
Yeah, buddy. Messages, right?
All right, well, let's move on to...
And no, Pierre did not support the fucking trucking protests. He did not support blockades. He specifically said, I support legal protest, legal and lawful protest.
Otherwise, well, I want to say something about the last campaign that we need to all be conscious of. Our candidates who ran in the GTA, when knocking on doors, were confronted again in 2021 with this idea that was put forward in 2015 about a barbaric telephone tip line. And the message it sent to them, we have 4 seats out of 53. The message it sent to new Canadians is, you are not welcome in the Conservative Party of Canada. The result and the outcome speaks for itself. One thing that we have to be clear on in the next campaign and the next leader is that we welcome new Canadians. They are part of the family. They are welcome, and they are Canadians, period. Yes. But those who are part of that campaign and propose this idea need to account for that.
Thank you, Mr. Charest, for saying that. As someone who immigrated when I was 5 years old, I am in the best position to relate to new Canadians. I know what it's like.
What, they're playing the immigration card hard? What the fuck is this? Oh, so that's how they're going to steal the vote. I see. Oh, yeah, all the new Canadians voted for us.
To get through school and to have a heavy student.
I hope the new Canadians are smart enough to realize the whole country's going to go to shit if they put anyone with Poilievre up there.
Party.
I think that in 2020, Canadians were not concerned about the barbaric snitch line. What they were concerned about is the snitch line on your neighbor if they had a friend over, or a snitch line about a church if they wanted to congregate. That is un-Canadian. I come from the former Soviet Union. I know what democracy is all about, and I know how precious our democracy is. And the fact that the conservative movement failed to stand up for democracy is something that is going to remain with us for a generation. And I'm uniquely positioned to speak on these issues credibly. I am committed to restoring Canada's democracy.
Okay, I like him too. I like him and Poilievre. Poilievre more, obviously, but...
Party didn't stand up for freedom during the pandemic. Pierre.
Well, I did stand up for freedom during the pandemic. From the very beginning,
That's not true.
I was among the loudest voices in
You were not one of the loudest voices, Mr. Poilievre. You were not.
Oh my God, what is this?
did not speak up until it was convenient
Actually, that
for
is
you
not
to
true,
speak up.
Madam Lewis.
You did not
That is
even
not
go
true,
to
Madam Lewis.
the trucker protest. You actually went
But I
and
respond.
you took a picture in your neighborhood at a local stop.
Let's hear from
You
Mr.
did not
Polyev,
speak up
please.
for the truckers,
Let's
and
hear
you
from
did
Mr.
not
Polyev.
speak up the
Thank
loudest,
you.
Mr. Polyev.
First of all, I did go to the trucker protest, both on Parliament Hill and in my community.
You took a picture
I
up
was,
front,
I
Mr.
was
Polyev.
there at the trucker protest. I was on the street. I was in the supporting those who were fighting for their freedoms.
When it was
and I did,
popular
and I
for you
did.
to
In
do
fact,
so.
I did it.
Only
If I
when it
could,
was popular.
if I could, in fact, I opposed the vaccine mandates as soon as they were announced. I am on public record doing it. I campaigned against the vaccine mandates throughout the entire election campaign. I never once wavered from that position. I also joined with several other conservatives to lead the charge against the censorship bill, the C10, which we helped stop in the last parliament and which I will stop in this parliament. And we will fight tooth and nail to put a permanent end to vaccine mandates and other oppressive actions by the government that take away people's medical freedoms. Thank you.
She's literally paid by the libs to open her mouth. She's controlled opposition hard.
Mr. Aitchison will just give you a brief opportunity to respond as well.
I guess what I want to say here is that, this whole situation with the vaccine mandates, the truckers' convoy, it never should have happened in the first place. Leadership would have engaged people. It should never have happened in the first place. And the fact of the matter is this. True. Justin Trudeau used vaccines and vaccine status to divide Canadians in a corrosive, disgusting political display to win votes. And what we cannot do as a party is continue with the divisive, polarizing rhetoric that Justin Trudeau has been using.
They said corrosive. No way. I've been jokingly saying toxic, corrosive, putrid, because everyone's like, that's toxic, that's corrosive, that's nuclear fallout radiation. Now they're actually saying corrosive.
We're going to move on to round two, but there will be plenty of time for future rebuttals, I promise you. So round two, we're going to ask each of you a personalized, direct question based on your record, based on your public service up to this point.
Based on what Trudeau paid us to ask, even though we're independents.
After each of you has answered, we will give you additional time for rebuttal. I'm going to begin with you, Mr. Polyev, and I want to start with the trucker convoy. It's something we've already been discussing. You've been criticized for your support for the trucker convoy. One of your fellow candidates has even said you should be disqualified for leadership of the party based on your engagement with the convoy. As we all know, public opinion on the trucker convoy is sharply divided. The Trudeau government and the mainstream media have gone to great lengths to vilify the truckers. And back in February, you said that you were, quote, proud of them.
That's right.
Has your opinion on the trucker convoy changed since?
Yeah, because he supports legal and lawful protest.
No and no. My position has not changed. I said at the very outset before they even arrived that I simultaneously stood with the law-abiding and peaceful truckers who were fighting for their livelihoods and liberties while condemning any individual who breaks the law, blocks critical infrastructure, or behaves badly. That is the position I took then. It's the position I take now. Now, Mr. Charest learned about the trucker convoy on CBC, like other liberals, and he misrepresented them.
Yeah!
He believes that I should be censored. He believes I should be canceled from this leadership race and disqualified, in his words, because I don't share his liberal viewpoint. That is the kind of cancel culture and censorship you would expect from Justin Trudeau, but instead we're getting it from this liberal on this stage.
Yep.
Frankly, Mr. Charest, for you to talk about law and order is a little bit rich, given that your party, your Liberal Party, took $500,000 of illegal donations when you were the head of that party. The average trucker has more integrity in his pinky finger than you had in your entire scandal-plagued Liberal cabinet.
Ooh! Ooh!
So I do stand up for the freedoms of Canadians, and I acknowledge that the working class has been demolished in this country over the last couple of years. We don't need elites who've been able to rely on special contracts with Huawei to look down on them and call them criminals. Instead, we need to stand up for the people who are struggling and give them hope for the future, and that's what I will do.
Woo! You're fucking here, hard fucking
Thank you,
hard.
Mr. Polyev, and there will be an opportunity for rebuttals at the end of this round. So we're going to move on to Dr. Lewis, your question.
Calm down, Charest.
Dr. Lewis, you are publicly pro-life, and you have proudly shared your social conservative views with Canadians. However, as we saw in the 2019 election, the legacy media demonized leader Andrew Scheer for his Christian views and beliefs. In a matter of days, the media changed the narrative to be entirely about abortion and gay marriage. So if you were leader of the party, how would you handle this issue? And what do you say to the large number of conservatives and Canadians who simply don't want to have a debate about abortion?
I think it's very important that in a free and democratic society, we are free to debate any issue. And I tell people I am pro-life. Many of my friends are pro-choice. And we have healthy discussions about the future. And there is so much that we agree on. And we need to come together as a society to determine that we can work out things, even controversial things like abortion. I still don't know where these gentlemen stand on this issue. I don't know whether they're pro-life or pro-choice. And the media will hound them. For example, Mr. Pierre Poilievre has ran from the media the last few days because he doesn't want to declare whether he's pro-life or pro-choice. As a leader, he is going to have to declare that. He cannot just be a minister of finance if he wants to be a prime minister. He is going to have to...
She just said she had friends on the both sides, and then she's like, oh, he's got to pick a side. You got to come together, but he's got to pick a side. Double speak bullshit. Why is she attacking Poilievre? Why is she attacking anyone else?
For you, Mr. Baber, you emerge as one of the most vocal opponents of COVID-19 pandemic.
She's jumping on Poilievre because he's the strongest opponent, obviously, but that's not the move.
Being removed from the Ontario Progressive Conservative Caucus. What do you say to Canadians who might be worried about how you would handle a future pandemic and whether you would be able to make the difficult decisions needed to save lives?
Absolutely, because I will entertain opinion, something that was sorely missing from our handling of the COVID-19 pandemic. Look, I stood up for millions of Canadians who didn't have a voice because I believe that I serve my constituents. I don't serve the boss or the party leader. I serve Canadians who felt that the political class failed them, that failed to defend them against lockdowns, against the mental health pandemic, against their surgeries being canceled, against their cancer screenings missed, failed to defend their children that develop depression or eating disorders. I will put my record against anyone, but I want to come back to something I've heard here because I can just imagine myself right now in the audience and I'm listening to this and we have one candidate accusing another of not...
So I had to do stuff and pause the recording.
The convoy. Here again, we politicize the issue. Instead of talking about the underlying issue, which is making people do something against their will, which is forcing someone to make a decision between their ability to...
Yeah, how about affecting the medical staff? That's insane.
Not speak about the underlying issue. And here's another thing. I think Canadians are counting on us to do better. I have respect for every single candidate on the stage. I like everyone, even Jean, who can't get my name right. But I think that every single one of you would make a better prime minister than Justin Trudeau, that's for sure. And second of all, we have to remember what we're up against. We can't have a situation where any of us are so irreparably harmed. We cannot go out there and contest a general election. So I invite us to focus on the issues.
Minus Charest, because he's a clear fucking controlled opposition.
Want us to do. Thank you.
Includes raising taxes and introducing a cap-and-trade program. Many conservatives don't connect with you, and frankly, some are wondering why you're running for leader of this party. So I'm wondering if you can set the record straight. Are you a conservative?
Yeah.
Thank you very much. And Roman, thank you for your comments. And Leslyn, I have a deep respect for the position that you hold on the issue of abortion. And I want to say a word about social conservatives tonight, because we may not agree on all issues, but who are the people who call themselves social conservatives? And I'm not a hyphenated conservative. But who are they if not people who have a faith-based life, believe in their families and their communities? Sounds like pretty good people to me. And they are part of our family, and they will always be part of our family, and they need to be respected. Now, in this room tonight is Preston Manning, who called before this debate that we act respectfully in the view of uniting the party after the leadership race. Well, so much for that, Pierre.
Nobody cares. You're useless.
In this race, I stand with a record
Nobody clapped.
all my life. I'll give you an example, Candace. I believe in fiscal conservatism. The Liberal government that succeeded me, Mr. Couillard, that followed, left an $8 billion surplus after 15 years to Mr. Legault. $8 billion. You're not going to see that in your lifetime again. A higher credit rating in Quebec than Ontario. We reduced taxes. In fact, I reduced taxes in 2007-8, income taxes for middle-class, lower-income Quebecers, which actually allowed Quebecers to do better than Canada, the United States, or Europe, or Ontario during the Great Recession. The credit rating agency says one of the key decisions for us having a better performance, more jobs, more economic growth, was the fact that I reduced taxes, which was opposed by this person here, Pierre Poilievre. He was opposed to it back then. So enough of the hypocrisy. And on the Hill, I agree with Scott. This mess that we witnessed is the...
He was opposed to what? He's like, I was like, what? Opposed to dropping taxes? What?
Supported an illegal blockade. You cannot make laws and break laws and then say I will make laws for other people. I'm sorry, but that is a question of basic foundation and principle in my life.
You're out of time, sir.
Thank you.
All right, there will be time for rebuttal. Everyone will be given a chance to rebut what has been said about them. But before we get to rebuttal, we do have a question for Mr. Aitchison. So, the previous Conservative Party leader, Mr. Aaron O'Toole, ran for Prime Minister as a quintessential Ontario moderate. And we were promised by the Ivory Tower commentariat that that approach would win seats in the Toronto area. It did not work. Why should we believe that a Conservative Party led by you would bear different fruit?
Well, listen, it comes down to this. We need to be consistent in our message, and it needs to be a conservative message.
I mean, these are great, but it's pretty much Poilievre and whoever the Liberals are propping up against him. Leslin or fucking Charest or that Russian
Mr.
dude.
Trudeau effectively used vaccines as a tool to divide Canadians. Scare them?
Thank you so much, Mr. Aitchison. So we're now going to move on to rebuttals. Every candidate will have open debate. So we will start with you, Mr. Poilievre. You have 30 seconds.
Well, in addition to once again repeating a bunch of Trudeau rhetoric on our hardworking truckers, Mr. Charest misrepresents his track record on taxes. He raised the sales tax twice. I voted to cut them twice, Mr. Charest. He voted to raise the fuel tax, and that was on top of the consumer carbon tax he brought in. He brought in a health tax. He increased spending so much in Quebec that the government, as a share of the economy, grew by 25%. And he left a $1 billion deficit and the biggest debt of any provincial government in Canada. That is not the record of a fiscal conservative. I fought for lower taxes and balanced budgets and making life more affordable. And that is how we're going to win the election in the suburbs, by giving people their purchasing power back, something that I can do because I have a strong track record of fighting for it my entire life.
Thank you, Mr. Poilievre. Next, Dr. Lewis, you have 30 seconds.
Well, I just want to add to what Mr. Poilievre said, that Mr. Charest did raise taxes, and so I think it's unfair for him to single out Mr. Poilievre. I also want to speak to what Mr. Aitchison said. When you speak about conspiracy theories, there were a lot of quote-unquote conspiracy theories that came through. And actually, the Liberals actually used that to divide us. So I'm really surprised that you're here saying that we should unite while you're labeling your fellow conservatives as conspiracy theorists.
Thank you, Dr. Lewis.
Yeah, good call.
Next chance for rebuttal is over to you, Mr. Baber.
Thank you. I would echo something that Dr. Lewis just said. I like Scott a lot, but a lot of concerns that Canadians had over the last year to 2 years have actually come through. We still have between 15 and 20% of Canadians that cannot board a plane or a train. They're landlocked in their own country. How anyone can believe that this is allowable in our country is beyond me. We have, like the Prime Minister does.
Theorist up here, but the Parliament has been fighting vaccine mandates. We've been fighting the ridiculous rules around travel. Melissa Lanceman, sitting in the audience here, has been an amazing member of Parliament fighting this every step of the way. And she does it with respect. She does it with respect. She's effective. And she eviscerates the liberals every day. And she does it with grace and style. We can do that. We can do it. Melissa Lanceman's the example.
Thank you, Mr. Aitchison. And final rebuttal is to you, Mr. Charest.
No, but please, bear with me. Bear with me. Lay to rest this accusation of being a liberal. No, but please, bear with me. Bear with me. I fought the 95 referendum, and I'm in this race because I believe in the unity of the country. I think Western alienation has lasted long enough. And what I see there, I've seen in Quebec. And I ran in 95. I fought in the referendum. And I went to lead a coalition in Quebec of Federalists when there was no Conservative Party of Quebec, ladies and gentlemen, as is the case in British Columbia. And you know what? I was successful. We pushed back on that referendum, and Canada stayed united. And believe me, if I was able to fight back the separatists, it's not this guy here on the stage tonight that's going to intimidate me and stop me from defending Canada. That's for sure. That will never happen. Count on it.
Fingers as crooked as he is.
And during the period of the Great Recession, we did reduce income taxes, and Quebec's economy did better than the rest of the country and better than much of the world. Why? Because that was the conservative thing to do, and we were successful.
Reduce income taxes while raising taxes on everything else. Oh, yeah.
Stop lying.
I'd like to respond to.
So we'll now do 3 minutes of open debate, and I'm going to start with Mr. Polyev to respond to what was just said, and then we'll do 3 minutes of open debate.
I do want to respond to him.
I do want to respond. Look,
Yeah, Leslin, chill
it's
the
your
fuck
record
out.
that was liberal, Jean. You governed like a liberal. When you raised the sales tax, not once, but twice. Then you bring in a fuel tax. And then you decide that gas prices are still not high enough, and you pile on a carbon tax.
And then he slips in, oh, but I lowered your income tax a little bit.
A health tax. That is not conservative, no matter what you call it. It's not your name as a party that was liberal. It was your track record of more debt, higher taxes, and more expensive government that was liberal, Mr. Charest. You can try to run from your record all you want, but the reality is that's what you did when you were there. And it is not just your record on fiscal conservatism issues. You blocked shale gas development. Now you claim you've changed your mind. You brought in a long gun registry after we got rid of it, going after farmers and hunters instead of inner city criminals. I could go down the list of all the liberal policies that you brought in that you're trying to hide from today, but we don't have enough time to go through them all. I am a true conservative. I've stood for the same things my entire life. I'm not just putting on temporarily a blue shirt to cover up a red shirt underneath it in order to take over the party.
Thank you, Mr. Polyev. Let's go to you, Mr. Charest.
Well, we don't have to go down a long list. Why did you oppose the fact that I reduced income taxes? Yes, you were part of a government that opposed. You can't rewrite history, Pierre. You can't rewrite the facts to fit your rhetoric. You were in the House. You were part of the government that opposed the fact that I reduced income taxes.
What are you talking
yes
about?
or no?
No, I did not. I was not. I never commented on your income.
Fine.
Frankly, Mr. Charest, you didn't cut income tax, so there was no income tax cut to oppose. You raised taxes. You raised consumption taxes.
Excuse me?
You raised health taxes. You raised every tax, and you canceled out any minuscule reductions that would otherwise have been realized.
If you can't
and
get
furthermore,
that right,
Furthermore, Mr. Charest,
if you can't get that right, how can you get the rest right?
Mr. Charest,
he reduced income taxes.
Charest's not defending himself at all.
Said that that's what allowed Quebecers to come through the Great Recession much better than anyone else. If you're ready,
Refuses to address any of the other taxes.
In all of Canada. That is your record on finance. You raised the sales tax. No one will trust you in an election on inflation because you raised inflation when you raised the sales tax. I cut the GST. That's what the Harper government did. And if you take a minute to stop attacking the Harper government, which is the party that all of us are supposed to be part of, then maybe you would recognize all of the good that that man did for this country.
Thank you, Mr. Polyev. We'll now move to Dr. Lewis for a quick rebuttal, please.
I'd like to
Shut down, Karen.
I'd like to respectfully say to my friend that I was not specifically speaking about anyone in our party when I referenced conspiracy theories. My concern is that We continue to run from tough issues because we do not want to be labeled conspiracy theorists. And then months later, these realities manifest itself. That is my point. As conservatives, we need to be strong, stand up to the Liberals, argue tough issues, and not be afraid of being labeled like you tried to label me, Mr. Aitchison.
No. I still.
We're going to have to move
I still
on.
had rebuttal. I didn't get rebuttal.
Well, we're going to have future rebuttal opportunities, but we've got to move on for the sake of time.
This is not the Doug Ford caucus. Come on.
God damn. Shots fired.
All right.
All right, so here's what I'm going to say. Excuse me.
No. Hey. Chill, bro. All right. So we're going to...
This is Canadian politics. Chill, bro. Come on.
Give you an equal amount of time to respond. In this round, you will go one by one with 45 seconds, and then afterward, we will give you a chance for rebuttal. There'll be an open rebuttal where Mr. Baber and everyone else can rebut as much as they would like.
Well, not Mr. Baber, apparently.
So, Candace, do you want to start?
Yeah, sure. The first question will go to you, Mr. Baber. So in the world of journalism, we're always told to follow the money. But in Canadian journalism, the money trail leads us right back to the federal government. The overwhelming majority of journalists in this country
We have a program, Baber. Shut the fuck up.
are funded by the government. And now the Trudeau government wants to start censoring and regulating the internet. Do you think it's appropriate for politicians to fund and regulate the journalists whose job it is to hold them accountable?
Of course not. And Candace, CBC News is no longer news.
No.
It's a communications arm for Justin Trudeau.
Yeah.
How can media objectively cover the government when the government signs their paycheck? It's utterly impossible. You know, I was born in the Soviet Union. There was a newspaper called Pravda, and Pravda means truth. And I see no difference between what we're seeing in state-run funding. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to defund the CBC. I'm going to end all subsidies and bailouts, but I'm going to go a step further. I'm going to end the advertising relationship that government has with media. We've seen unprecedented media buys by government in the last couple of years. Many of them are self-serving. So there should be no more self-serving advertising on the taxpayer dollars. There's no democracy without independent media, and I'm committed to restoring Canada's democracy.
COVID, and that's to do a very thorough audit of all the government spending on publicity, on how it was spent, where it was, not just in the context of COVID, but also all government advertising.
Sounds like liberal
something
bullshit.
that would be, I think, extremely
Liberals audit themselves all the time and they get away with everything. It sounds like liberal bullshit.
and the media.
Thank you, Mr. Schray. Next to you, Mr. Polyev.
I would defund the CBC.
Period.
I would defund the CBC to save over $1 billion. And I would repeal the Internet Censorship Bill, C-11. That bill, yes. That bill came forward as C-10 in the last Parliament. I was the first MP to sound the alarm bell over that bill. And I joined with other MPs like Rachel Thomas in order to stop it from passing before the election was called. Not only will I get rid of that, but if they do decide to go ahead with this digital safety commissioner, who will have the power to take down what you post online, remove websites that it considers hostile to the government, I will fire that digital safety commissioner, and I will uphold and restore freedom of expression in this country.
Next to you, Mr. Aitchison.
Well, thank you. I'm actually inclined not to just burn down the CBC. I think that it used to serve a really useful purpose in this country in terms of our heritage and bringing us together. I think that it needs to be refocused. I think it needs to be reined in and obviously not be the arm of the Liberal government anymore. I agree with that.
Nobody said they're going to burn them down. They said defund.
I should point out that I was actually a member of the Heritage Committee when we were opposing Bill C-10 at the time.
CBC's all right. Radio Canada is more Canadian.
Law. And Pierre's right. He was, in fact, the first one to raise the alarm bell, and we did a really respectful, effective job at slowing them down, proposing reasonable amendments with experts. It frustrated the Liberals, and eventually, of course, Justin ran out of time on his other scandals, and we had an election. So we stopped them, and we did it in a really respectful way. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Aitchison.
Government. We saw dishonest reporting during the trucker convoy. Saw that only charges of mischief were laid. I would defund the CBC and save Canadians. Most Canadians.
Current Prime Minister Justin Trudeau is very eager to import American culture wars into our country. In 2020, he did this with Black Lives Matter. He is currently trying to do this with the sensitive issue of abortion due to what's happening with the U.S. Supreme Court. As Prime Minister, how would you approach American culture wars, and how would you approach the eagerness of liberals to import them into our country?
See this choice. Either we're going to go down the road of American-style politics with the division and the polarization, the hot button, the sloganism, the attack dog attacks, or
That's regular politics, but okay.
and we will be the Canadian Conservative Party that we should be and that we're destined to be and that they want us to be. A national party able to connect all parts of the country, whether it's Alberta, Quebec, or Ontario. That is what we're destined to be. So, no, we should not import American politics into this country. And we should stand for what we believe in and the values that we believe in as Canadians. And I will fight that style because for Canada, keep in mind, this type of politics, Americans may be able to survive. But for Canada, this type of politics will be extremely damaging to the fabric of the country.
Bullshit. He just wants to amalgamate into the WF bullshit.
Should not have to put up with American-style politics.
His whole argument is that Pierre is angry and wants to put up a fight. Like what? He's supposed to bow and suck your fucking political dong?
Mr. Trudeau using vaccine status in the last election to try to demonize Canadians. And he continued to do it, even invoking the Emergency Measures Act when it was completely unnecessary to do so. It's disgusting, and we can't fall into the same trap. We need a message, and we need a leader who can communicate a message and a vision for Canada that talks about bringing us together, that unites this country from east to west, north and south, urban and rural. We got to stop demonizing each other. Canadians are amazing people, and there's more that unites us than divides us. And we need to focus on that in a positive message.
Dr. Lewis?
We need to focus on diversity of thought, on our diverse viewpoints that we have in this country. We need to recognize that we have diverse regions and that our country is being...
Can she throw diverse in there one more time?
Alienation. There's so many aspects in so many areas in our country that are being neglected. The Atlantic region, the West, Quebec. These areas have their unique problems, and we can...
What about the natives, yo?
U.S.-style policies to fit our diverse country. We need to focus on making sure that we unite our country. National unity has been at an all-time low now, and it's time that we work together with our different regions to look at our unique strength and our cultural uniqueness.
Diverse, unique.
Mr. Baber?
It's not American cancel culture wars. It's left-wing ideology cancel culture that's been on the move for the last 40 years.
Yeah, it's regular politics. There's no, everybody's got to hold hands.
Democracies and demonizes and tries to cancel anyone that disagrees with it. I have been standing up to cancel culture and radical left-wing ideology for the last 2 years, like no one has in this country. I know exactly what this ideology looks like, and we have to call it out. And I think that Canadians would choose, instead of collectivism, instead of this ideological pie-in-the-sky utopia that failed everywhere around the world, Canadians just want to be left alone. That's it. And this is a message that we can be comfortable with. We should be comfortable calling out this ideology for what it is, and we should also stop the division with our neighbors to the south.
Fair enough.
It's a very deliberate strategy. The radical left and the government and Justin Trudeau believe that if they can divide people on race, gender, and now vaccine status, and by next year they'll have thought of a new way to divide us, then that you'll be afraid of your neighbor and you'll turn to the state to give them more power. It's called divide and conquer. Don't worry that you can't afford food or a house or gas up your car. Be afraid of your neighbor or your trucker or your local co-worker. That is a deliberate strategy. You see, control is something people fight over. Freedom is something you fight for. There's only so much control to go around. That's why people fight over it. However, there's enough freedom for everybody. If your neighbor gets more freedom, it doesn't mean you get less. If the immigrant gets the freedom to work as a doctor, you get the freedom to have a doctor. More freedom for one is more freedom for another. That's why we should unite for freedom.
We will now do 2 minutes of open rebuttal, and we will start with Mr. Baber.
Look, I guess in this hall, all I have to do is say Melissa Landsman's name and get some applause, right, Mr. Atkinson? Look, our party, back to Mr. Atkinson, our party refused to stand up for Canadians. We did not stand up for Canadians. No one on the stage stood up for Canadians until the truckers came to town. Thankfully, Dr. Lewis came around after the election, and I thank her for that as well. But we need to articulate to Canadians that we will have their backs no matter how prevalent cancel culture gets to be. Even when it gets difficult, we need to show moral clarity and say what we believe and do what we believe is right. But I'm also, and this goes back to the previous round, you know, I'm listening to some of the folks here, to some of my friends, and frankly, I'm a little disillusioned and I'm worried. I go from room to room where Canadians are counting on us to be better, where Canadians want to reinvigorate their belief in the Conservative Party, and I don't think that attacking each other, scorched earth, is going to win us an election. Let's look at ways to have a civil...
Well, we gotta... Poilievre's not Poilievre. Charest's a fucking... Charest's a controlled opposition. He's a tool. He's a puppet. He needs to be scorched.
Anybody is welcome to interview.
Yeah, I've got one. Mr. Giovanni, if we're going to unite this country, we have to come clean. Mr. Charest needs to come clean with how much money he got from Huawei. We need to know the truth here. The Liberals are going to ask that. He's never told us how much he got paid. This is a company whose software and hardware has been banned from the 5G networks of 4 of the 5 I countries because of allegations, in many cases proven, that they have used it for espionage. Mr. Charest, how much money did you get from Huawei when you were working for them, either directly or indirectly? Just the number, please. How much?
Oh, yeah, baby, the line.
Mr.
Transparency line.
That Stephen Harper welcomed into
Just
Canada
the number, please. How much?
In 2012.
How much, sir?
We're not on a student council here, Pierre.
How much?
Pierre, this is not a student council, please.
How much?
Can't answer the question. He's just like Trudeau.
Mr. Charest, it is not a laughing matter. How much did you get from Huawei? Answer the question.
This is a company that was welcomed into Canada by
Well, then you
Stephen
shouldn't be
Harper
afraid to tell us
in
the truth about how much.
2012 for the telecommunications companies.
How much?
And that's what Huawei
How
did.
much did you
Welcomed
take?
in by a Conservative government.
How much did you
I
take,
am very
Mr.
proud
Charest?
of the fact that I
Mr.
also
Charest,
worked
how much?
to
Answer
free
the question.
the 2 Michaels and to bring them back home.
Oh,
and
right.
if you want evidence of that, ask the wife.
Free Michaels. They were captured for years because Trudeau wouldn't do dick.
You to free the 2 Michaels. Come on. You got some swampland to sell us in Florida, too? Come on. How much?
Mr. Charest, please, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Can I talk?
Answer the question.
Is this
Well, yeah.
the country you believe in where people aren't allowed to talk?
I'd like to hear what
Please.
He's not stopping him from speaking. He's asking you a question. You're not answering.
Just
I
answer
want
the
to.
question.
I want to talk about this issue.
How much?
Mr. Poilievre, let's give Mr. Charest a chance to respond.
Just the dollar figure, please.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Jim Miller.
What do you hide?
Classic liberal. Yeah. Non-transparency. That's...
Ask a question. There's been a lot of talk of freedom right now. Well, I have a question for Mr. Poilievre. There's
How
this
much?
bill in 21,
How
Bill
much?
21 in Quebec. This was a
How
piece
much?
of legislation that restrains the rights of Canadians to wear religious symbols. This proposal was put to me when I was Premier of Quebec, and I refused to do it, even if it was popular at the time to do it. I refused to do it. I stood up on principle. Now, when Bill 21 was enacted, I wasn't running in this race, and I pronounced against it. And I'm still against it. And in Quebec, this bill is very popular. And that doesn't make me any more popular in Quebec. But I want to ask something here. During this leadership race, I have said that if Bill 21 goes to the Supreme Court of Canada, my government will stand and speak to the interest of Canada. I will not be neutral on this issue for my country. Pierre Poilievre has said in French in Quebec, not elsewhere in the country, that if it goes to the Supreme Court of Canada, he will not speak on behalf of Canada. So Pierre, this idea of freedom, is it real or is it a slogan?
It's real.
Okay, we're,
Why won't you stand up for Canada? Why won't you stand up to the Supreme Court for those who are affected?
Gentlemen,
It's real.
in the interest of time, we're going to need to move on, but
It's real.
in fact, the two of you,
Respond?
the two of you are
I
actually,
gave him 15 chances to answer
The two
my
of you-
question. He couldn't do it. At least give me one chance to answer his. Fine.
30 seconds. Go ahead.
Wow. Really? Come on.
30 seconds. 30 seconds.
Yeah, we want to hear it.
30 seconds to each of you. Go ahead.
Thank you.
Yeah, listen, Mr. Charest actually brought in the forerunner law in Quebec to this. He brought in a law to ban women who wear face coverings from receiving any provincial government service. So now that he's here in Ontario, he takes exactly the opposite position and over to pander. It's another example of him flip-flopping. I'm against Bill 21. I have said I was against Bill 21 in English, in French, in Quebec, in English Canada. I'm 100% against it. I said if I were a Quebec politician, I would vote against it in the legislature. If anyone proposed it federally, I
What a
would
GBR. And we're
vote
back.
against it. And
That's
if I were
30
Prime Minister, I would make sure it would never happen in this country. I'm 100% against Bill 21.
That's 30 seconds. Mr. Charest, 30 seconds to you.
This is a very important moment in the debate. Mr. Poilievre has not said, his position is that if this bill goes to the Supreme Court of Canada, he will not speak on behalf of Canada. That's what he said in French.
He just said false. So
On it, Mr. Poilievre say so tonight. But you said to the French press in Quebec that contrary to Charest, if it goes to the Supreme Court of Canada, you will not defend the interests of those who are affected.
That's 30 seconds.
This,
Right.
take good note, because that speaks to his...
because that's the only thing you got, bro. It's nothing.
Is there anything more important than freedom of religion? I don't think so.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
So we're going to move on to some new questions, and this question is going to be posed to Mr. Baber, Mr. Aitchison, and Dr. Lewis. On the
Freedom to eat, freedom to work, freedom to buy a house. A little bit more important.
in Canadian Medicare, its lack of surge capacity, its exorbitant costs, and its ever-lengthening wait times, which deny Canadians timely care. What is your position on healthcare reform? Do you think a mixed healthcare system of private and public services is the answer to Canadians' concerns? We'll start with you, Dr. Lewis.
I think we need to redefine healthcare so that it's meeting patient needs. And we saw with COVID, the vaccines were administered in private settings, even though the government's paid for it. So we have the capacity to engage in public-private partnerships, and we should contemplate that. We should not be protecting a flawed and outdated system. We also need to create a pandemic response, and that should not come from a global organization like the WHO. We need to fix our healthcare system, because if an infectious disease can shut down our system, then we know we have a broken system. Lockdowns are a symbol of a broken system. We cannot be...
Has a role in there. But Canada has one of the most deficient healthcare systems in the world. We have one of the lowest number of beds per capita among OECD countries. And there's no question that we need to address this shortage and potentially look at a capital expansion. But we can't do it until the provinces get their act together. We need more nurses and less compliance officers. We need less waste and duplication. I am actually pleasantly surprised, and I welcome Jean's comment on this issue. I think that there is room for supply-side healthcare within the framework of the Canada Health Act. That's where we have more options that are still single-payer. We need to get serious about fixing healthcare in this country, especially with an aging population. I'm going to be having a serious conversation with the provinces about a capital expansion, but we need to get the waste under control.
Mr. Aitchison.
Well, listen, I agree completely that part of the reason we had so many lockdowns is because we had a fragile healthcare system. We wear this as a badge of honor. It's part of our identity as Canadians that we think we have the best healthcare system in the world, and we simply do not. If you have critical care problems, if you have issues that are going on for a long time, it takes forever to get care in our system. We have to not be afraid. Back
to reduce wait times. People should not be waiting for surgeries.
I cannot have better health care. We will not need mandates. And we continued not only.
And that really was the biggest reason.
More oil and gas to Europe. But here's the problem. Politicians in Quebec continue to oppose and block energy projects. François Legault has. So how do you work with Quebec as a player in achieving this national goal? So we'll start with you, Mr.
The answer is yes. I support oil and gas. I support pipelines. In fact, the last pipeline built in Quebec was built under my government. And yes, when I was premier, I supported Energy East, and I supported Energy East after I was premier. What should happen is that the system works. That's the kind. I think we should do GNL. Applying Europe is on nuclear and natural gas. If Europe, and this was before the war in Ukraine, if Europe says that, if they believe they can do it, Canada can do it. But you need a prime minister who understands how the federal system works and is going to work with the provinces to make that happen. It's the only way. And if someone has a track record of making those things happen, I do.
Yikes. Boomer claps.
Mr. Polyev.
We are importing 130,000 barrels a day from overseas in the East Coast. Meanwhile, we have the third biggest supply of petroleum on Earth, right here in Canada. Why is that? Well, Bill C-69 makes it next to impossible to build a pipeline or to expand an oil sands mine. The federal approval process is so bureaucratic and slow, the gatekeepers stand in the way and prevent people from actually building resource projects. So what is my plan? I will repeal Bill C-69 and replace it with a simple, direct process that consults First Nations, protects the environment, but gets projects started. 2, I will give my support to approve Newfoundland's project to increase by 400,000 barrels a day its production.
I like consult First Nations. Yeah.
All of the overseas oil that we're bringing by tanker to St. John, New Brunswick. And within 5 years, I will have banned dictator oil from Canada altogether. Furthermore, I disagree with Mr. Charest on natural gas. He banned shale gas in Quebec. We need shale and tight gas and other forms of natural gas. And we need to approve the liquefaction process so that we can cool it down, put it on ships, send it overseas, and break European dependence on Russian natural gas once and for all. If Mr. Charest had not banned natural gas in Quebec, we might be able to do that already. But I will not only support those projects, but I will support liquefaction processes so that we can ship our natural gas to Asia. The closest point in North America to Asia is British Columbia. The closest point in North America to Europe is Newfoundland. We have a massive geographic advantage, and we have a weather advantage because liquefying natural gas is a process of cooling it down. What do we have in Canada? Cold weather. It is our most abundant natural resource. So let's cool it down, turn it into liquid, send it overseas, sell it, and turn dollars for dictators into paychecks for our people.
Thank you.
Here, ha.
I'll give you each 30 seconds to respond to one another, and I want to specifically re-ask the question, how would you work with the people of Quebec and the Premier of Quebec to get Canada's energy to market? Mr. Charest, to you.
Well, it's going to take a lot of work. You can't impose it, Candace. I want to be very clear. Anyone who thinks that in this federal system of government, the federal government can just walk in and impose it, needs to remember something called the National Energy Program. And if you remember the National Energy Program, that's what happened the last time a Trudeau went into Alberta and said, we're going to go over your heads and get this done. You need to find ways that will incentivize them to do it. And that means a new reality, but also in the Saguenay-Lac-Saint-Jean, a huge mobilization of people who believe in that project. The same is true for New Brunswick, for example. This LNG plant in New Brunswick that was built for the purpose of importing needs to be retrofitted now for the purpose of exporting gas. And that's the work that needs to be done. But I'll tell you something, if you are going to get that done in a federal system of government like ours, you're going to run into folks in Alberta who are going to say to us, no, you're not going to, the feds are not going to impose on us anything about natural resources. It has to be a cooperative approach. And that's exactly what I practiced all of my political life.
Thank you, Mr. Schrader.
Yeah, sucking opponents' dicks and taking payouts for them, yeah.
Is that the Trudeau Liberals are imposing on Alberta. They're imposing rules that make it impossible for Alberta to export its product and also even to send it to other Canadians. So we need to repeal C-69, C-48. We need a simple process for future approvals, and we need to speed up the approvals of all natural resource projects so that it's not just oil and gas, but also lithium, graphite,
Dr. Lewis and Mr. Polyev as to why. We don't know. But what we do know for certain is that some Canadians are concerned that Mayor Brown is sowing division in our country. He has been criticized for manipulating diaspora politics to bolster his campaign. How does your strategy to grow the party differ from Mayor Brown's, and what will you do to engage Canadians of diverse backgrounds? Over to you, Mr. Baber.
Thank you. Look, I come from a North Toronto riding. We need to, first of all, appeal to urban voters. And that means we should feel comfortable talking about urban issues like transit. I'm in favor of building mass transit. Like housing, I'm going to offer a very robust housing plan by doubling the first-time homebuyers exemption, by divesting ourselves of federal land that is not protected. This country had to offer. I've had an opportunity to contribute to this country. God knows I've paid enough taxes, thankfully. And I would also say that, look, we for democracy and urban voters and new Canadians.
Dr. Lewis.
I am in a unique position to be the best candidate to grow our base amongst new Canadians. I myself came here when I was 5 years old. Immigrants are natural conservatives. They have strong family values. They believe in hard work. They have strong faith values. And we have ignored that population. We need to reach out to them and connect with them on a values level. I am in a unique position to be able to do that. I understand the struggles that they've endured. I know what it's like to have a student loan. I know what it's like to
student loan,
and also teaching at law school. These are things that speak to the struggles that many immigrants have, and we need to be able to connect with them. Many of them left their countries. They took risks. They came here. These are inherent conservative values which we need to connect on.
Mr. Polyev.
Well, listen, the bottom line is that Patrick Brown says one thing in one room and exactly the opposite in another room. And that is what he has done throughout this campaign. It's what he did when he ran for leader of the Ontario PC Party. He said that he was against the carbon tax. And then as soon as he became leader, he embraced Trudeau's carbon tax and said he would do Trudeau the favor of imposing it right here in Ontario. I've said the same thing on that issue and all other issues throughout my entire political career. And that is what I will continue to do. So how do we reach out to Canadians? We have a clear, consistent, conservative message in before the leadership race and after the leadership race, so that Canadians know that we mean what we say. Thank you.
3 Ontario members of Parliament, 1 Ontario member of and opinions of the majority of people in Western Canada. So if you were leader of this party, how would you support Western Canadians? How would you stop the next iteration of a Reform Party split?
And on the very future for all
Don't care about this question. Moving on.
this country.
Can we catch up?
I'm actually a born and bred Calgarian. I understand the West, yes.
Hell yeah.
That.
Oh, he's got the
I
East
understand
and
the
the
West.
West.
I grew up there, spent my first 2 decades there. My family still lives there. And I'm proud to fight for Western Canadians in Ottawa, even while I am an Ontario MP. I also remember the days when the National Party, got too liberal and we lost Western support. That risk still remains. And that's why we need someone who is truly conservative, who will stand up against carbon taxes and long gun registries and fight for the values that unite us across the country as conservatives. Only by uniting all conservatives in all regions of the country will we win the next election and bring fairness to every province. Thank you.
You're keeping the party together.
There's a lot of the only way to that it seem far away in another region. They have faces, they have names, they have families, and they share the same values. And big things get done. In this country, big things can't get done unless there is that leadership. I'll give you an example on Energy East. Did you ever hear Mr. Trudeau say, I am in favor of Energy East? Do you think a project of that size can get done if there's no leadership? Some all Canadians
for closing statements, and we will go in the reverse order of the opening statements and start with you, Dr. Lewis.
Canada is the best country in the world, and I want to make sure that the opportunities that I had growing up in this great country as a child will be there for future generations. Millions of Canadians can't travel on a plane in their own country. Our charter needs to be defended. Parents have a right to raise their children in accordance with their values, and I will introduce a parental rights bill to stop government encroachment on parental rights. Seniors, disabled, veterans have a right to live in dignity, and every single reserve should have clean water. We must restore freedom and prosperity to Canada once again by bringing back jobs and developing our natural resources while protecting our environment. I will use my education in environmental studies and international law to defend our sovereignty against global organizations like the WHO and the WEF. I will strengthen our democracy and bring back freedom and prosperity to Canada once again.
Mr. Aitchison.
Thank you. Thank you for being here tonight and contributing to the future of our movement and of our country. Our values and principles are timeless. Acting on them and leading with respect is the right approach for our movement's success. Our politics are increasingly divided, and we have stopped respecting those that we disagree with. If we Conservatives are going to grow our party and succeed, we cannot try to out-divide Canadians the way Justin Trudeau does. We must lead with respect and bring our country together. This is the right approach to attract Canadians to our movement, and it is the way to lead to better government that's capable of delivering results. We need real, principled leadership in Ottawa that unites Canadians, and that's why I'm running to be the next leader of the Conservative Party. Whether it's affordability, defending free speech, housing, foreign affairs, we are living in extraordinary times. Working together, we can make life better for all Canadians. But first, we must work hard to invite more of them to join us in this quest. And that starts by leading with respect. Thank you.
Mr. Poilievre.
As I said at the outset, people feel like they're losing control of their lives. It could be the teenager sunk into depression because of 2 years separated from sporting and social activities. Or the trucker who, after being called a hero for 2 years delivering our products and services across the border without a vaccine, suddenly became a villain or a lawbreaker in the eyes of some Liberals. Or the 32-year-old living in his parents' basement because home prices has doubled. Or the single mom skipping meals so her kids don't have to. I'm running for Prime Minister to give these people back control of their lives by ending vaccine mandates so that people can make their own medical decisions, by tackling the inflationary deficits and taxes that have driven up the cost of living, and reining in the Bank of Canada back to its original mandate, and also banning it from bringing in a central bank digital currency. I'm running for Prime Minister to restore economic freedom, but also freedom of expression so that people can speak clearly and openly without fear. I'm running for Prime Minister to make this the freest country on earth so you can take back control of your life. Thank you.
Mr. Charette.
Thank you. I'm running to be the leader of the Conservative Party of Canada. And the parties needs to, I think, accept the challenge of Canadians, because this is our moment, to meet that challenge so that we can unite the party and unite the country. It's nothing less than that. It is an extraordinary task, but one that requires a lot of determination to stand up and fight for what is right, including, as we heard tonight, about Bill 21, which is a test of real leadership. Let's not lose sight of the fact that if we are divided, that hangs on Justin Trudeau. He's the Prime Minister of the country. The number one responsibility of any Prime Minister is to keep the country united. The number one. All else won't count if we are divided. And if there's one thing that I believe in and have fought for all my life, and I've paid the price because I fought for my children and my grandchildren, and I have fought for you, it's the ideal of Canada. And I will make this ideal as great as it always has been by leading a national Conservative government.
Last but not least, Mr. Baber.
Thank you. I was born and grew up in a communist regime. I know the value of democracy, and I see Canada's democracy being eroded. And I will end censorship, 21st century segregation, and ensure free and independent media. I come from very humble beginnings, but I helped build and grow a small business, and I know what it's like to pay the bills. And I'm committed to you and your child's Canadian opportunity. I'm not a career politician, and I don't play the game. I was the only one on this stage to oppose the narrative at a great cost to my career and to my loved ones. Because I'll always stand up for Canadians, even when it's unpopular. And that's what you can expect from me. I'm not afraid of politics or left-wing ideological cancel culture. I will always say what I believe and do what I believe is right. And even if you disagree with me sometimes, that's okay. That's democracy. But you will always know where I stand. Being here with you has been an honor of a lifetime. But I ask you to kindly rank me first. And I would be incredibly grateful to lead our party and our country.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, let's give a round of applause to all of our leadership candidates. Now, thank you all for joining us. Of course, again, we'd like to thank our sponsor, Meta, for providing coverage of tonight's debate on Facebook Live. We'd also like to thank our presenting sponsor,
Meta, what the fuck?
Cliff. You are all encouraged to stay, socialize, have a good time with one another at our welcome reception, which is located on the 3rd floor. Also, a reminder that our program will begin at 8:30 a.m. back in this room, where we will hear remarks from the Honourable Candice Bergen, Interim Leader of the Conservative Party of Canada. On behalf of the team at the Canada Strong and Free Network, thank you for attending. Enjoy your evening.
Clap. Oh, no shaking between Poilievre and Charest. Fuck you, Charest. Yo, baby. That was good stuff. That was a good conservative debate. I want to see the liberal one now. The liberal one's got to be lame. It's got to be a bunch of butt wiping. Oh, you're so good to the immigrants. You're good to the immigrants. Wait till you see my immigration policies. Wait till you see my free housing and free childcare. Free dental, free healthcare. Wait till you see my policies. We're going to take care of everyone and do everything right. How are you going to do it? Well, there's money and stuff, and it's going to get done. Don't worry about it. Oh my God. I have ancient coffee in my coffee thing. Forgot to empty. Anyway. Should be exciting.